I have studied this my entire life, and when Donald Trump...
What are they going through now? This is our moment not to let this happen again.
Then call out anyone who does it. And when Donald Trump says Chuck Schumer is a Palestinian,
I'm calling out on this couch today,
Jew,
the topic that we're on
too.
Is in your party.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Charles on Point. I'm Charles, and today's debate starts with New York's recent primary election upsets, but quickly turns into something much bigger. What begins as a political discussion soon becomes a heated clash over where legitimate criticism of a foreign government ends and where accusations of bigotry begin. Marie finds herself outnumbered on the panel, but she refuses to back down, setting the stage for a tense and emotional exchange. Watch the full debate, because the conversation only gets more intense as it unfolds. The panel challenges each other's arguments from every angle, and some of the strongest moments come later in the discussion. Guys, I'll break down the key points and share my thoughts toward the end of the video. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from.
Marie, let's start with you. I knew that was coming to me. I could sense you turning.
Yeah, do you agree with this premise? Does it frighten you? Are there concerns emanating throughout the Democratic Party of what the anti-Semitism, how it has been fomented or is appearing?
Well, look, I have lots of thoughts on this. First, I would say what we are seeing across the country is an anti-incumbency, anti-establishment movement that people, in both parties are like, we want you out, we want new leaders. On this issue, look, when it comes to Dan Goldman, he was beat by a fellow Jewish politician, Brad Lander, who calls himself a liberal Zionist. He doesn't support Israel killing civilians in Gaza. He doesn't support what the Israeli government is doing in the West Bank. But for Dan Goldman to say that is anti-Semitism, look, we are all opposed to anti-Semitism. I've worked on this issue for a long time, and we need to call it out when it is there. And there are some Democratic candidates who I think are there, and I really do not want to be part of my party and do not support. But someone like Brad Lander, we have to have room in this country to oppose the Netanyahu administration in Israel, to say that Israeli policy is not good without all being called anti-Semites. And to say that Brad Lander, who is Jewish, who got a lot of the Jewish community to support him in ousting Dan Goldman, is somehow anti-Israel and anti-Semitic, that is a cheap shot. And quite frankly, it weakens the argument when we do call out actual anti-Semitism, of which there is a lot on the right.
Goldman had his money refunded at a coffee shop. My gosh.
Are you going to call
talking about Brad Lander? He's calling out anti-Semitism because he was a victim of it 48 hours ago. And that should be the focus right now. Chevalier, okay, you want to talk about Brad Lander? Let's talk about Chevalier, who after babies were put in ovens on October 7th, the day after, she attended a pro-Palestine rally where there were speakers who attempted to justify October 7th.
And I obviously don't support that, Kayleigh.
Claire Valdez, when they put Goldman on the screen at the victory party, her victory party, the crowd was chanting F AIPAC. You need to reckon with this part of your party. I'm going to quote Sarah Foreman, a Democratic strategist. She said, this is the version of the Democrats that the voting population of New York wants. We need to stop pretending it is not the case. These are socialists, in most cases, anti-Semites. 66% of your party wants socialism.
Why did so many Jews vote for them if they're all anti-Semites?
In all due respect, because I love you and you're a smart political person in mind. But if you think we were talking off air about John Ossoff that you think could win a Democratic primary.
Absolutely.
No way, no how. You're looking at an AOC winning a Democratic primary. Socialism is the way forward for your party. 66% of Democrats say it. And until you reckon with it, we're having a socialism takeover of a party that represents half the country.
Here's the challenge with Israel. I have never seen in my political career of 20 years any issue on the right and the left crater in public support over the last several years as much as support for Israel. And that is not because they're all anti-Semites. There are some, and we need to call them out. And I agree with you, Kayleigh. But a lot of that is because of what the Netanyahu government is doing. And look, yes, these candidates win in New York. These Democratic Socialists win in New York. That's not who Democrats are running in swing states. John Ossoff bridges the parts of the party, moderates, progressives, including on Israel.
Netanyahu didn't refund a man's money at a coffee shop.
Can I jump in on the nationwide thing?
I'm just saying that we have to look across the country. Support for Israel is cratering. And for those of us who want Israel to be safe and secure, we need to grapple with why.
Israel and Jewish Americans are not the same thing.
I agree with you.
This is our country. And if you want to press against, a lobbyist, AIPAC, and you want to don't make it commensurate with hating Jews. Your party is in the place of, fine, then rein in the people who are expressing hate.
Yeah, what about the people on the conservative side expressing hate that have been doing this, that have been talking?
Don't you? We're talking about
no, but
the
like, if you
takeover
call
of
out
the
Democrats, call out Republicans
American
too.
Party.
This is not a Democratic problem.
Let's go nationwide.
This is not a Democratic problem.
We don't have anti-Semites, two of whom won a primary just Tuesday night.
Do you know how
Name
many?
for me the two Republican anti-Semites that won a primary.
I could give you a list of 100.
Okay, let's go nationwide. In Maine, an oyster farming Nazi.
That's not
Plagner.
true.
In Michigan, you've got El Sayed, who is Hassan Piker's most famous fan. You've got on this coming Tuesday, out in Denver, Colorado, you have a congresswoman, an incumbent moderate of sorts, Diana DeGette, who has been there for probably 30 years, running against a 29-year-old Malat Quiros. She has no political experience. She's fired from her New York lawyer job for writing anti-Semitic, anti-Israel stuff. You're seeing this happen all across the country. And the fact that the Democrat Socialists of America, in 2015, they had 6,000 people. Bernie Sanders launches a quasi-socialist campaign. They say, let's hitch our wagon up to this. Even though we're farther to the left, let's see where it takes us. Today, they just had a hat-trick sweep in New York, and they have more than 100,000 members nationwide with their eyes set on taking down Hakeem Jeffries.
Because people know that the system isn't working for them. This is the thing. People, I don't think a lot of these voters that voted for Democratic Socialists also voted for Donald Trump in 2024. So some of it is about policies. I mean, we can look at the data. It's just the numbers don't lie.
Well, what hinges there is free stuff and affordability.
They want someone who's going to blow up the system.
We're talking about hatred for Jews in this country. Okay? And the press, the physical press against them, the threats against them up more than 400% in just the last few years.
Yes.
We cannot let that cook. This is 1933, by the way, where you've got people who want to go to a business who happen to be Jewish and they're being turned away. I remember, and I don't know if everybody has studied it this much, but that's really when it started. It didn't start with killing Jews. It started with please don't cut me off. Because I'm going to require that you know more than what you're saying about what they're going through right now.
I have studied this my entire life. And when Donald Trump...
What are they going through now? This is our moment not to let this happen again.
Then call out anyone who does it. And when Donald Trump says Chuck Schumer is a Palestinian,
I'm calling out on this couch today,
Jew,
the topic that we're on is in your party. And instead of you taking responsibility for that with any kind of idea of how to stop it Goldman even was against Trump. But look what happened to him. It happened because he's Jewish.
No, it didn't. It did not happen because he's Jewish. It happened because he gave a blank check to a right-wing Netanyahu government that is committing genocide in Gaza.
What happened at the cafe happened because he's Jewish. Kamala Harris said Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, didn't get picked on the bottom half of her ticket because he was Jewish.
That is not why.
And she
Don't
said
tell me about my party.
Well, call Kamala.
That's not why Josh Shapiro didn't get picked. I promise you.
Call her. It's in the book. She said it on camera. Call her.
That's not why he didn't get picked. And when Donald Trump sits in the Oval Office... I'm the wrong
Harris. Call her. She's your friend.
When Donald Trump sits in the Oval Office and says Chuck Schumer is a bad Jew and a Palestinian because he doesn't support Bibi, that is classic anti-Semitism. And everyone on the right needs to call that out as much as they're calling out some Democratic Socialist congressional candidate in New York. That's all I'm asking for. That's it.
Can you answer for your own party?
I will answer for it all day.
But you didn't.
I just did for 10 minutes.
Guys, the second half of this debate is where the conversation stops being about one congressional race and starts becoming something much bigger. One side argues that rising hostility toward Jewish Americans is becoming impossible to ignore, while the other insists that criticism of the Israeli government is being unfairly labeled as anti-Semitism. Those are two very different claims, and treating them as if they are automatically the same only creates more confusion instead of clarity. One of the strongest moments comes when Marie agrees that genuine anti-Semitism must be confronted wherever it appears, but she refuses to accept that every criticism of Prime Minister Netanyahu or the Israeli government belongs in that category. She argues that voters can reject a politician because of their stance on a foreign government's policies without rejecting an entire religion or ethnic group. Whether you agree with her or not, that's a distinction worth debating honestly, instead of dismissing outright. The conversation then shifts toward accusations that anti-Semitism is uniquely a Democratic problem. Marie immediately pushes back, arguing that extremism and hateful rhetoric exist across the political spectrum. Her point isn't that one side is innocent. It's that both parties have a responsibility to confront hatred within their own ranks. That's a challenge that applies regardless of political affiliation. And it's hard to argue that selectively calling out prejudice helps anyone. Perhaps the most intense exchange comes near the end, when history is invoked to underscore the dangers of rising anti-Jewish hatred. The emotional weight of that comparison is undeniable. But Marie responds by bringing the discussion back to present-day politics. She argues that if people truly want consistency, then inflammatory remarks should be condemned, no matter who makes them. She points to examples from both parties, suggesting that credibility depends on applying the same standard across the board, rather than only when it is politically convenient. In many ways, that became the defining disagreement of the panel. Is criticism of a government's policies being confused with prejudice against a people? Are politicians applying principles consistently, or only when it benefits their side? Those questions remained largely unanswered because the debate kept circling back to partisan blame instead of establishing common ground. Guys, at the end of the day, this conversation highlights how difficult these issues have become in American politics. Real anti-Semitism deserves to be confronted without hesitation. At the same time, democratic societies also depend on the ability to criticize governments and public officials without automatically being accused of hatred. Holding both ideas at the same time isn't easy, but it's probably the only way to have an honest conversation. So now I'd like to hear from you. Do you guys think the panel drew a fair line between criticism of Israel's government and anti-Semitism, or do you think that line has become too blurred? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Charles on Point, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next discussion.